friends, and welcome back to Tuesdays with Grace. Today we're going to be talking about our TrueCut. So first I wanted to talk a little bit about our rotary cutters, what makes them special, why we have them in the first place. So as usual, we have a straight cutter. It's very similar to anything you've ever seen before. Super fun, easy, but what makes this guy special is it's a quick release with a magnet. So when I go to change my blade, I don't have to worry about fighting for my life. I can drop the blade down, lift it up, the blade's on there, and I can snap it back down. That's my favorite part. I don't have to worry about twisting any knobs, anything coming loose while I'm cutting, or cutting myself while I'm trying to replace that blade. The magnets in the straight cutter are my favorite. They come in a 28mm, 45, and a 60. And these are fabulous. Then we also have our ergonomic cutter called the Comfort Cutter. The Comfort Cutter was developed to help those with arthritis, shoulder pain, wrist pain, to make sure that they can keep quilting. So it's similar to the straight cutter in the fact that it does have a quick release. So when you go to change your blade, you just pull this little button here and your blade drops down. You can lift it up, drop it down, and snap it back on. No screws required. So as soon as you hear that click, you're good to go. And you can swap them interchangeably with the track system. It makes it really simple. You can see this guy has a little guide here, and this one does not. But it's a quick change, just the same as you change your blade. It's really fast. You can also switch them to be left-handed because I cut with both hands. I usually have one of each of the Comfort Cutters and one of these. So when you want to change it to be left-handed, all you do is drop the blade like we did before. We'll pull out this black piece and we'll slide this guy off right here. Then we're going to switch sides, and I'm going to just make sure this clicks in there. Flip it over, slide this black piece in. Now it's locked in, and I can drop it down and click. Now it's ready to use left-handed. There's also a couple of different ways you can hold the Comfort Cutter. When I first started here, I was holding it like this just to keep my thumb straight. This felt a little bit more comfortable, having my fingers underneath and holding it similar to how I would hold a traditional rotary cutter, just with my thumb on top. Then I decided I was gonna pick this up and try a different way. So one of the things that we tell people is make sure your top knuckle is extended and it's gonna fit right here on the groove. So when your top knuckle is placed, you can then wrap your fingers around and it fits comfortably right in your hand. This allows you to use the natural pressure of your hand to do your cutting. It's kind of fun, and I definitely prefer to hold it with my finger over now that I have learned that. And as you can see, it's keeping that wrist straight. I don't have any hyperextended fingers like I do with this guy. My wrist is able to be straight, unlike it is here. Now we're gonna get to some cutting with the rulers. So we're actually going to be cutting for next week's project. So we're doing some preemptive cutting here. I'm going to pull over a piece of fabric. And I'm looking to cut some strips. So I'm going to use my 6.5 by 24.5 inch ruler. This is my best friend. This is probably the ruler that I use more than any other that we carry. And I'm going to line it up here. Because this starts at the 1/2 inch, I'm going to mark it at 3. So it looks like it's 2.5. It's actually 3 inches. And all I'm doing here is lining up these lines. So you can see the 1/2 inch line going up the middle here. And all I'm doing is lining my fabric right up on that so that I've got a nice edge and it makes one continuous line through the holes. That's one of the questions we get probably most often about our rulers is why do they have those holes? There's a couple different reasons. Our rulers are made with injected mold plastic. So they are durable. I can take and knock this on the counter. I don't have to worry about scraping the edge and getting those nicks in my ruler to make it so that I don't have straight cuts anymore. It's a whole lot easier when it has the holes because it also allows it to be bendable. I don't have to worry about snapping my ruler, which every time I do this, it scares the heck out of people, but it's so fun. So we're gonna drop this on the 3-inch line and we're measuring from left. So always be sure when you're cutting, after you cut that first cut off the bolt, everything pretty much should be measured on your ruler. So once your piece is square, you can measure off your ruler and that will get you more accurate and safe cuts than doing it without. Now, one of the other cool parts about our rulers is the track system. They have a fun little lip on the edge here you can kind of see. And that lip allows me to ride the track. So it slides right in and it rolls right along that track. So I never have to worry about veering off into no man's land when I'm making my cuts. So I'm gonna go ahead and use my comfort cutter. So what I'm gonna do is open up my blade here. This is the safety. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this back here and slide it into my track. So I can hold it here and that makes one perfect cut. So now we've got a little 3-inch strip. You can measure it on the mat here. We've got the 3 inches and I am gonna go ahead and cut 4 of these. So again, we're gonna take and go over 1/2 inch, 1.5, 2.5, 3 inches. And I'm gonna line that up. I've got good visibility through the holes in my ruler. And again, we're just gonna slide it into the track and cut. And even though you could see my hand wobbling back and forth, I still have a great straight cut. All right, we'll do 2 more of these and then we're gonna cut a square. So we've got our 3.5 inch here. Line it up. I've got one continuous line and there we go. We just need one more here. And you can see there's just one continuous line there, makes it really simple. And we'll slide up and cut. Perfect, so now we've got our strips. Now we can find our gray fabric. And we're gonna talk about some squares. So a lot of people don't like that there's not an edge on this. That 6.5 by 24.5 inch ruler is not meant to cut on this edge. It's meant to cut off your big bolts of fabric, your big squares, but we're not using this edge when we have the guide on there. However, all of our square rulers have an edge on all 4 sides. So when you go to cut your squares or square up your blocks, you don't have to worry about pivoting as much. You have 4 clean edges that you can slide on. So I'm gonna pick a spot here. And just to demonstrate, I'm gonna cut all 4 sides. This kind of looks like it's gonna be fussy cutted. All right. So I've got it lined up where I want. Now I'm gonna use my straight cutter because I'm using all 4 sides and I'm gonna cut with both hands. I'm gonna lock it in the track here, go a little past, come up, I'll slide, switch hands, and go here. And then lastly, I'll come up and cut this last one. Really simple, I didn't even rotate my block here, and now I have a perfect 6.5 inch square. So this is gonna be the center of our project for next week. And I've got my strips but we need a few more. So I'm going to talk about layers. A lot of people ask, when should I have my 45 versus my 60 versus my 28? And honestly, in my opinion, it depends on how many layers you're cutting through. If you're just doing a couple layers, your 45 is going to be great. If you're doing more and you're trying to cut in bulk, you're going to want the 60 because it has a larger blade. You're able to rotate faster and get a cleaner cut. You can have a deeper stack of fabric. So I am going to line up a few pieces. And while I'm doing that, I'd like to talk about the track system a little more. Part of the reason we have that is the veering off into no man's land, right? Everybody, when you get to that top of your ruler, sometimes everybody does it at least once, where you veer off to the side and you ruin a perfectly good cut of fabric. So the track system is great to keep you safe and in line, but it's also great to keep your fingers out of the way. One of the issues that I've had in the past is running over my fingers with a rotary cutter. But the track system keeps you from sticking your fingers where they don't belong and running over them with your rotary cutter. Okay, so we've got a few layers here. I'm up to 4, and I'm just lining up this top edge. I don't necessarily care about the bottom here. I'm just focusing on this line here. And we're going to use the 60 millimeter because I'm cutting a lot of layers. It's especially great when you're cutting through a whole project's worth of fabric and you just want to cut it all at once and not have to worry about it. That 60 millimeter is going to be your best friend. Okay, so I've got a stack here. Let's see, we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 layers. And we can easily still line everything up on that line like we talked about before. We've got 1/2 inch, 1.5, 2.5, 3. And we're going to use the 60 here. Slide it into the track, so again, you're not veering off into no man's land, and I can't stick my finger out here. I'll slide that through. There we go. And we've got our piece here. So we're going to cut just a few more of these with the comfort cutter. We're going to flip this around because if I'm going to use the comfort cutter, I got to use my right hand for this guy. And it's the same thing though. So we've got, although on this side, we only have our straight numbers. So it's going to be 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch. And even though we have a straight line, there's still little holes that keep you on that straight and narrow. You can see straight through the ruler to see where those lines up so that you still get the one continuous line. I'm gonna grab my 60 millimeter comfort cutter, hold it the same as I would the 45, and see how much easier that is for me to make that cut with the comfort cutter than it was with the straight cutter. I love it. Okay, we just need a few more of these and we'll be good to go. Again, we're gonna be doing that 3 inch marking, making sure we're all the way lined up here. We've got good visibility. And if I wanted to, I could stick my fingers in and grip my fabric through these holes. All right. We've got that one. And we just need one more cut here. All right, I've got my 3 inch mark. I'm gonna lock it in the track. And I have a perfect clean cut every time. Okay, we've got all of our pieces cut. And the last thing I did want to show you guys is the circle cutter. We don't necessarily need it for our project next week, but it's a fun way to show how to cut circles. And the circle cutter is honestly just so much fun to play with. You can make applique projects with it, you can do drunkard's path, you can do orange peel. It has so many possibilities more than just regular circles. But we're going to talk about the basics of the 360 circle cutter. There's a couple different moving parts here. So you have your pokey here, and this is going to keep your fabric in one place. This is what holds it and steadies you in the middle of that compass. Then we have the blade. So the blade is just a little cartridge inside here, and it floats in like this. It's just a little mini rotary blade. You can see it there. It slides right in, and it has a cover over it to keep your fingers safe. So we'll put that back in here, snap it in, pull off our cover, and now we're ready to cut. So I'm going to adjust this, and we're going to cut a 5-inch circle. So there's a little red line that tells you where you're going to be lined up, and I have that on the 5-inch mark here. And what I'm going to do is hold down with my right hand on this little button here. This moves up and down, as you can see, and that again is going to be that point that holds our fabric in place. I'm going to cross my hands over and push down on the blade. That will allow me to cut a perfect circle. So the circle cutter is super fun, and you can make so many different projects with it. Last thing I want to talk about is our sharpeners. We have two different sharpeners. One is electric and one is manual, and they're both great, but for different reasons. So this is our linear sharpener, and I honestly love this guy. First, there's a few caveats. One, it does not bring your blade back to brand new. That is a huge misunderstanding, and we've heard a lot of feedback in that regard, but it does extend the life of your blade. So make sure when you're cutting and you feel a little bit of resistance, stop and start sharpening right away. It's really simple. You've got a nice blade here. I can leave it in my cutter. I don't even have to touch the blade to use the linear sharpener. All I'm gonna do is slide it in here, and we're gonna go back a few times. So it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we're gonna flip it around, because it only sharpens one side at a time, and you have to do it even so that you don't end up losing your beveled edge. We're gonna do 10 times on this side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then we're going to test our fabric. We want to make sure that we've got a piece big enough that I can go all the way through my blade. So I'm going to start here. All right. You can see there's no nicks in the blade. It's sliced across perfectly. If it were to stop and skip, so if you had a piece that kind of looked like this, you would know there was still going to be a spot that needed to be sharpened. You can sharpen the comfort cutter blades, you can sharpen the regular blades, and you can leave it in the rotary cutter the whole time. That's the nice part about this. We also have the electric sharpener. If you have a whole stack of blades, you can do them pretty quickly. It'll sharpen all 3 sizes, the 28, 45, and the 60. All right, well that's a wrap for this episode of TrueCut. Join us next week for a fun table runner project on the long arm, and we can't wait to see you. Thanks for joining us on Tuesdays with Grace.